Page 12, advantages of seller financing. There's a whole bunch of them there. And I'm not going to, I think you can read. I think if you're looking at the book right now while you're listening, you can read, but there's a lot of advantages on there you can't get anyplace else. And one of them is I don't deal with banks. Banks are out of my life, buying or selling. I do not need any bank to run my business for me. And by the way, if your business revolves around banks, your business sucks. Because it won't be long before your bank is going to abandon you, and that relationship you think you've got created with that banker is going to go away when that banker gets fired or transferred to another bank or whatever. There's no such thing as long-term relationships with banks because there's nothing long-term about banks. They're very, very, very volatile. And besides, just how much money are you going to borrow at banks for? They're going to cut you off anyway. So when they cut you off, now what are you going to do? The answer is you're going to learn bigger and better ways to do business with a lot less resistance and, of course, not risking everything you own because you're liable on debt. Guys, we are not going to be liable on any debt to buy any single-family house ever, with no exceptions. Ever. The days of guaranteeing debt are over. That's the biggest mistake you can make in real estate, is guaranteeing debt. It'll put you out and down. Losing money, big deal. Go make it back. Guaranteeing debt could take you years to get out of that mess. Stay out of banks. When you're dealing with owner financing, no banks. Doesn't show on your credit report because you're not going to be personally liable. If you don't guarantee a debt, it can't show on your credit report. And we're not guaranteeing any debt. We're going to buy in a land trust or an LLC. That trust or that LLC will guarantee that debt, and in time you'll learn how to even do that without risking much at all. We don't personally guarantee debt. And we have flexibility when we're dealing with people. That's why I like owner financing. I'm dealing with people. I can change the rules anytime the two parties agree. Can't do that with banks. We can close. Everything we do with seller financing is quick. If we buy it with seller financing, we can close whenever we're ready. If we sell it with seller financing, we can close within 2 days after locating the buyer that we like. Very, very fast, and the closing costs are drastically reduced. On the HUD-1, there aren't all these fees that somebody makes up to create more revenue for the lending institution. Seller financing sometimes eliminates the anxiety over subject to. Buying subject to means that the seller has no way to foreclose on the property if they want to take it back, but seller financing means that they do. We'll get to that, and I'll make sure you understand that when it comes up. And of course, when we're selling, the fastest way to sell a house on the planet is to sell it with owner financing. There is no faster way. When you can offer a house to people who can't qualify with owner financing, you've got a huge market, makes it very easy for you to attract people, and now you just pick the best, the one with the highest down payment. And of course, there is some processing you got to do, but I'll cover that for you tomorrow. And another advantage of seller financing, number 14, is that it gives the seller an income to wash out their debt if they want to go qualify for another loan. If I lease option a property from a seller, they're not going to get credit for 100% of that rent they receive. If I buy it with owner financing, they should get credit for 100% of that incoming payment that they're collecting. Now today, lenders sometimes want that seasoned a while before they will approve that income, sometimes even a year, but the seller is either aware of that or don't care, or they wouldn't sell it to you with owner financing. All right, disadvantages, there are some with owner financing. Number one, and this is going to be an issue that you're going to face, if you buy with owner financing, you have closing costs to deal with. If you're buying with owner financing and the seller's getting a bunch of money down, then fine, they can cover part of them. But if you're buying with owner financing and they're getting no money down, guess who gets to pay the closing costs? Somebody you know and love. That'd be you. And that's going to have to be taken in consideration when you decide. If you take it subject to, you're going to pay the closing cost. And in some states, that's big. So that's another thing you're going to have to learn is how do I calculate closing cost in my state? You learn it once, you got it. You learn it once, you got it. And sometimes, because of those closing costs, and because there's not a lot of equity, you might elect to lease option it rather than buying it with owner financing and paying those closing costs. So even sometimes you may be able to buy them with owner financing, but you choose not to. And disadvantages when you sell with owner financing, again, you may have to foreclose, and you better understand the rules in your state before you choose to sell with owner financing. Dodd-Frank cannot be ignored when you're selling with owner financing. As of January the 10th, 2014, Dodd-Frank kicked into gear, and Dodd-Frank has a provision in there concerning seller financing. It is not an issue for you if you just remember one thing: do not sell more than 3 properties with owner financing in any one entity per year. If you remember that, you'll stay exempt. And also remember that if an entity sells to an entity, it is exempt. So if your land trust sells to a land trust, it is exempt. Commercial deals are exempt from Dodd-Frank, and lease options are not even mentioned in Dodd-Frank. So don't let anybody tell you that Dodd-Frank kills seller financing. In fact, if they tell you that, say, you're correct, man, it sucks, doesn't it? That's one less competitor you got to worry about. All right. And of course, when you sell with owner financing, you have sold. That means you do not get to depreciate the property and you get no appreciation. You have sold, and you should understand your tax consequences before you go deciding to sell with owner financing. And because if you are not careful, you could get taxed on the profit even though you haven't received it yet. It's not likely. You would have to be called a dealer, and actually there's very little or no chance of you guys being called a dealer anyway, but I want you to know the rules before you sell with owner financing. Remember, it is a sale. So if I buy today and I sell 2 weeks from now with owner financing, any profit that I collect is going to be on short-term capital gains, even though I only have to pay those taxes as I receive that profit. Because it's an installment sale, it is still short-term capital gains as I receive it, which means I'm going to pay the highest taxes, whichever tax bracket I'm in. Whereas if I held that property a year, it's long-term capital gains, which, as we said here today, is about half of what you're going to pay on short-term capital gains. So know the tax rules before you elect to sell with owner financing.